There were 39 employees, and they're all detailed in the tribunal complaint by name. And when I do the makeup, right, the breakdown, 85% of them are female. So the appearance is that I was attacking a female by filing a complaint. But 85% of the staff are female, and the female are the ones who are doing the harassment. So what are the chances that it's going to involve a female? It's 85%.
Just close your eyes and you'll see something, a story never seen. It started at Starbucks with a barista queen. She joined a criminal group one day, a group that couldn't be seen. But Paris, he fought them all like the animals in the sea. The animals in the sea.
Welcome back to another wonderful episode of This Is Your Life, starring Paris Tosin. Should I try that again? Actually, we're changing the name of these impromptu episodes podcast. It's a podcast about a very complex, disturbed criminal conspiracy involving, in the beginning, Starbucks employees, involving members of organized crime, break-ins to my place, attempted assassinations, yada, yada, yada. Rushinsky is gay. The title, I think we should change it to something about something like the Starbucks criminal conspiracy, which would include a whole hodgepodge of information and details. Today's episode is unique because I'm going to dig into the matters dealing with the police, and specifically the undercover police. Now, it's an interesting situation because they have been in operation, I would say, starting from the year 2017. This would be in Vernon, British Columbia, up north on the west coast of Canada. So everything I'm talking about is in Canada. It's a Canadian police, Canadian law, which is different from your laws, or maybe it's similar. If you're a democracy, it's similar. Canada is a democracy. That is the fundamental basis of a democracy, and a democracy has a constitution. We call our constitution the Charter of Rights and Freedoms, which I would refer to as the Charter. The Charter cannot be superseded by anyone. These are indelible rights granted to every Canadian citizen. So this, what I call the state, the police, cannot wantonly and recklessly violate the Charter as it is detailed. Now, because there are so many criminal acts, I'm going to try to focus on one particular type of incidences, which are consistent from the year 2017 up until today, which is 2025. We are in November or December, almost December 2025. So we're talking about 8 years. 8 years of consistent conduct, which I will argue, and I'm going to show in this video, in this episode, that the conduct of the police is in violation of the charter. They have caused harm to me by violating the charter. We're going to use one specific type of incidences. There are several which we won't have time to get into. Hopefully we can do this within a reasonable amount of time. I have said in the last video that I believe the police are corrupt. I think at the end of this episode, you will understand where my logic comes from. Because if the police, if the state recklessly violates the charter without justification and abuses its power in order to achieve their aims, to me, that's corruption, because you are violating the law. In Canada, the way I understand it is that if there's a crime, the police will gather evidence and will present the evidence to the Crown, the Crown Council. This is the law. They're the lawyers for the government. These are government lawyers paid for by the government, which the police have access to for free. Okay? The police work for the government, and the Crown works for the government. So money, what I'm saying is money is irrelevant. It's irrelevant. Whereas as a private person, I'd have to pay a lawyer to get advice. I'd have to pay lawyers to do the research. I'd have to pay lawyers to represent, they're very expensive. If anybody knows, they're extremely expensive, especially the good ones. So the police have access to the Crown. We'll call it, is it okay if I call it the Crown? You want to be the council, which is also a legal term for lawyer. So the police go to the council and they say, this is the evidence. And the council says, we will proceed or we won't proceed. So the police, what I'm saying is the police don't decide whether it goes to court. It's the council. Because the council knows the law. This is the law. This is the evidence. By the same token, the police are in contact with the council and they'll say, we have this evidence. Is that enough to take the case to trial? And the council will say, well, not enough. We need more evidence here, more evidence here. We need to show intention, right? Do we have any other witnesses? So the council will advise the police, who will then go out and gather more evidence according to the requirements of the council. Because the council knows what they need. Because you got to go to court, and the judge is going to hear the case, and the council knows what the judge needs to hear. And if the judge hears what they need to hear, then there will be a conviction. And and the other part is, if there's no chance of conviction, the council will not go to trial, because it's a waste of money and time. It still costs money. The government has to pay to do all of the work. So it's this two-handed system is what I'm explaining. And the police will know exactly what evidence council needs in order to convict, in order to arrest, in order to, beyond reasonable doubt for certain types of crimes. So the police, after a while, especially in my case, after a while, the police are getting very specific pieces of evidence so that they can tailor this case against me. And this is why it's concerning. Because the police and the council have been trying to work this case. And what happens is the police, they present more evidence to counsel. And because of many things I've already stated in public and stated on my posts on Facebook and even stated in previous episodes, counsel is taking note because that would form my defense, right? Or the defense lawyer would say in his defense, which I would be entitled to, this is the defense, which could nullify all of the allegations, right? But this has been going on for 8 years. And in recent months, it has intensified. And as I stated in previous episode, the police almost within, 48 hours were going to arrest based on the evidence they've been gathering. So, of course, in order to do diligence, I have to figure out what they've been gathering and what they've been doing in order to figure out if they're in violation of the charter, if I have a defense, if I have a case. And again, the situation is such that there's no allegation made, there's no charge, there's no arrest. But I know they've gathered evidence, which I'm going to talk about today. And I believe that the evidence they've gathered violates the charter on multiple sections of the charter, which would make the evidence inadmissible in a court, which is why this is important. The other part is it shows the underhanded, corrupt tactics they are using to cause my detention or my arrest. In other words, to be very specific, I have not committed a crime, and what I've been doing would be considered normal behavior. So this is the issue. The issue which we'll talk about. Normal behavior is being purposely, intentionally misconstrued into criminal behavior in order to justify some type of detention or arrest. I don't know what their plan is. Again, that's the other issue. I don't know what their plan is. Nothing's been presented to me, but I've been observing these people for a long time, just like I've been observing the criminals. Only now the criminal is the police. So we've established the basics, right? This is a video. I'm going to keep it as simple as I can. Hopefully lighthearted. I don't want to get too serious, although it might be a serious topic. But I think it's a very disturbing thing. I just want to say, I think I've said it many times, and I'm going to keep saying it because people don't believe it. The other thing is that the police, this is all my understanding. I'm not a lawyer, but I have to use whatever legal skills I have, whatever intelligence I have, in order to protect myself. So the police, my understanding, is they have no jurisdiction unless a crime is present, right? Because if some other law, there's another law. If it's a civil matter, then there's the civil court, right? If it's a small claim, it goes to small claims. If it's a residential matter, it's a residential matter. If it's a marriage, a divorce, the police don't get involved because that's not a crime unless there's somebody tried to kill the other spouse. So if you, in other words, to be very blatant, if you're going through a divorce, you can't call the police. Okay, and I'm sure people do, but they have it's called no jurisdiction. But they have jurisdiction in a crime. There has to be a crime. In this particular case, in my case, they have to fabricate a crime in order to justify their presence, in order to further justify rampant and wanton violations of the charter, which is inherent to every Canadian citizen, is granted to every Canadian citizen, any citizen born in Canada or who's obtained Canadian citizenship, which I am. It's a democracy. If you live in a democracy, it's the same thing. So they have to manufacture the crime. So let's look at the crime. Again, this is one. There's many of them. I don't have time to go through them. And let's talk about the coffee shop. So it used to be Starbucks when I was going to Starbucks, but I've been banned from Starbucks, so I don't go to Starbucks. I go to different coffee shops. And so the case is the same. It's the same as Starbucks. It started at Starbucks. The undercover police were observing me at Starbucks in 2017. And throughout, back then I was not fully aware. I mean, I was aware of the people involved, but I wasn't aware what they were doing. But in recent years, I'm aware of what they're doing. I know the people involved. I can recognize what they're doing. That's the big difference. But then when you reflect and you recall, oh, well, this has been going on for 8 years. So understand, there's 8 years of what I'm going to talk about. And this is their massive evidence that is going to use to incriminate me. But okay, let me give you the scenario. The scenario is this, and it's very consistent. Because in my belief, in my mind, I have not committed any crime. I've just been acting normally, what I consider normal expression of behavior. But you can decide. You can decide yourself if I've committed a crime. This is what I do. I enter the coffee shop. I say hello to the person at the counter, whether it's a barista or a server. I don't know their title specifically. They work at the coffee shop. There's high turnover at coffee shops, so there's lots of new people. In general, where I live, the people who work at the coffee shop are young, right? 40-year-old women with 2 kids don't usually work at a coffee shop. They usually have a better job, or they live on their husband's money, and they're busy raising children. Where I live, again, where you live might be different. So there's a lot of young people, and 85% of the staff are female and young. And this was the case with Starbucks, which was never really detailed in the episodes, although detailed in the tribunal complaint, that 85% of the Starbucks staff makeup are female and young. The only older female would be the management, the assistant store manager or store manager, who would be older. Store manager would be much older. District manager would be older. Older would be, 30s, 40s. So staff were under 25 because they're young people. They have time. They're going to school. They're trying to figure out what they want to do, and they have a job. That was their hiring practice, and that was broken down in the complaint with Starbucks, which had, in the Starbucks complaint, there were 39 employees. It was not just Sophie, which I've talked about a lot. There were 39 employees, and they're all detailed in the tribunal complaint by name. And when I do the makeup, right, the breakdown, 85% of them are female. So the appearance is that I was attacking a female by filing a complaint. But 85% of the staff are female, and the female are the ones who are doing the harassment. So what are the chances that it's going to involve a female? It's 85%, right? If I can hit a home run 85% of the time, what's going to happen if I hit the ball? And there's an 85% chance I'm going to hit a home run. So that was misinterpreted again by the tribunal as misogyny, but it's nothing to do with misogyny because the makeup of the staff is female. And I would say in most coffee shops, the makeup of the staff is female because men have other things to do. Men work, they work labor, they work in industrial places. They want to make more money. Men are not as friendly with customers, which is a very difficult job, dealing with customers 8 hours a day. And men don't have those necessarily verbal skills, communication skills, and they'd rather do something else where they don't have to talk, they don't have to engage customers, and they make the same or more money, right? Lifting boxes, loading trucks. A man will choose that over, working at a coffee shop, because that's just the demeanor. It's the demeanor, right? It's the character. But I'm not judging. I've often said to Starbucks, why don't you hire more men and hire older women? And then it doesn't happen. And I told Starbucks, why don't you hire, I don't care, hire older women. I will talk to the older women. I will talk to the older men. I have no problem with that. But they can't hire them, or they can't keep them. They can't retain them. So this is another issue. So this is another issue because what happens is, on appearance, it looks like I am targeting women, but I'm not targeting women. That's the people who work there are women. I have to order the coffee from 85% chance as a woman, and I will, as my own nature, I will speak to a woman as the same I speak to a man, pretty much. Right? It's friendly banter, it's communication. Right? I say, hi, how are you doing? I'm not going to say to a woman, I say, hi, I'm not nervous against the young women. Right? But maybe I'm supposed to speak differently to women, not supposed to be so friendly. Maybe that's the case. You tell me. So we have that situation. On appearance. So again, the police have undercover police. They're observing. Okay, he engaged this young female. But that's who works there. So I'm a writer. Especially in the past, I love to talk. I love dialogue, especially when I'm writing a script. I'm thinking dialogue, what's funny, what's going to work. And I tend to talk faster. I have a lot to say because I've written scenes. I've written hundreds of pages, thousands of pages of dialogue. So I have lots to say. Most people don't do that. I understand that. Most people don't do that. And if someone's not engaging or shy, I don't force them to talk. But if someone is engaging, I do engage, I do talk. It's very normal. In the retail business, I work in the retail business. I talk to customers as a worker now. Customers engage me, and we have the same conversations that I have. It's just in a role reversal, and I'm not calling the police. If a middle-aged woman comes up to me and makes some lewd remarks and flirts with me, I don't call the police because it's normal. Because the next customer, they're asking for something else. The next customer is very quiet. I can barely hear what they're saying. The next customer is a 95-year-old man who's telling me the government's evil. I'm not calling the police. I'm not reporting them to the police. In this particular case, I can get reported to the police because I go to the coffee shop. Because I've been identified. The police have identified or labeled me as a threat. So that's another point. You got that point. So you have this casual banter. Sometimes it's long, sometimes it's short. And then you say, what would you like? I'd like a cup of coffee. It happens. We're talking 30 seconds, a minute. We're talking like a minute. And sometimes for my own sake of enjoyment, especially when I'm developing a script, and you need some short dialogue, at the 30-second, what do you say that's interesting in 30 seconds? Sometimes, I'll work with that. Anyway, normal expression. There's no threats. There's nothing violent. I'm not selling propaganda. I'm not. There's no criminal act. I'm just telling you, it's very normal. I work in retail. I have seen far worse situations with me, and I don't call the police. I've never called the police because somebody said something too friendly. And just the other day, I had a woman say something, and it was kind of flirtatious. I didn't call the police. Because you know what? That's human nature. And everyone is different, and we should allow everyone to express themselves in their own way. It doesn't involve the police unless it's a crime. So that's the important point of today. So you order the coffee. We're talking 30 seconds, a minute. Hi, yada, yada, yada. I'd like a cup of coffee. How much? Here you go. Here's a tip. You take the coffee to the table. We're talking, the whole transaction is under 2 minutes. Okay? So there's not much you can accomplish in 2 minutes in friendly banter. In other words, you can't brainwash somebody in 2 minutes, but with your propaganda. You must believe. Nothing. It's very normal. What I'm saying, to be very clear, it's very normal behavior. Okay, but it's going to get complicated as we go on here. So that's the situation that has been going on for 8 years. In the case of Sophie, as an example, she liked to talk and she asked a lot of questions, and so we had longer conversations. To me, that's still normal, and if a customer is behind us, then you move on. Again, they're based on, conversations are based on engagement. You can't force someone to communicate. You can't force people to ask you questions. They ask you questions, you answer. They ask you more questions, you answer. It's totally with consent. You've given consent because you're asking questions. That was the situation with Sophie before she called the police and reported me as a stalker, which doesn't make any sense because she was the one basically stalking me. Okay. So we've covered all that. And now we're going to go to... Now I guess more. So I have to write this down because I can't remember all this stuff. So the police. Okay, undercover police. So there's undercover police. I don't want to describe them too much because it might give things away. And they're going to change their behavior. But they're there. They look like normal people. How's that? So, the police are observing me. And this happened just a few days ago. There was a undercover police at a coffee shop sitting right next to the cashier and observing my communication with this server barista. And in this particular case, so this is what he observed. Okay? He observed me communicating with this barista. The barista I met her 2 years ago at this coffee shop. I've seen her many times. We have spoken many times. She is connected to the family that owns the place. She's older. I think she's in her 20s. And she's also married to one of the workers, I believe, there. At the time, I was speaking with her. Okay? You understand the situation. But to the undercover police, they don't know all that backstory. Okay? So there's a married woman. She's in her 20s. And we've known each other in the coffee shop. and everybody knows me at the coffee shop. Okay, so the banter is maybe friendlier, because I know things about her. She speaks another language, so I spoke another language, right? We've spoken before several times, and we've had some wonderful short conversations. Again, there's nothing criminal about it. There's nothing threatening or criminal or targeted or about it. And then that she just happened to be there. The other day, there was one of the mail servers took my order, and I had the same friendly conversation. Like, it's, nobody calls the police. I don't know. Maybe after I leave, because with Starbucks, we're going to talk about that a little bit. Starbucks, you'd have Sophie asking me questions. We have a great conversation, and then she'd report it to the police or report to the manager. And then the next day, it'd be the same thing, and then she'd report as if I am forcing her to have a conversation, which you cannot do. And I am imposing myself on her, and there's something else going on. I'm threatening in some way. I never understood that. I really didn't, and it really upset me. And what happened was, with that particular case, what happened with Sophie was that she was manipulated by Andy and his network of organized crime, who said I'm a bad person. That's what happened. They poisoned her, and she believed it. And then they told her what to say to the police, and she said that to the police. What happened is the police then advised, I believe, the police advised Starbucks management on what to do when I came to Starbucks. Because what happened is, at some point, when I came to Starbucks, Sophie would go to the back room. And I would be there 2 hours, 2.5 hours, sometimes even 3 hours. She would be in the back room for the whole time. And I was going there 7 days a week, and she worked 5 days a week. So 5 days a week for at least 2 hours, she was stuck in the back room doing dishes or washing the floor or whatever they're doing in back there. Because Andy poisoned this girl to believe I'm a bad person, made her feel uncomfortable. Then she believed she was uncomfortable. Then she went to the manager. Manager went to the police, who were observing me coming in. And at some point now she's becoming uncomfortable. And they said, okay, this is what you do. You go to the back room. And this was all stated as well. This is all stated. This is all confirmed, I'm saying. This is all confirmed. So, a benign, normal situation was transformed into something dark and evil. And what's happening now is that the police are observing these brief conversations. They're taking notes on their phone. They're texting. So in this particular case, a few days ago, the police was texting for about 25 minutes after I sat down. He was very close to me, and he was texting. And he was just sitting there having a coffee and a pastry on his phone the whole time, looking at his phone the whole time, getting a response and texting. Okay? So he's giving direct observation to whoever or making the report. Okay? And this is not the only time, okay? But this is the process. Usually what a police officer observes is credible, right? A police officer is credible. If a police officer sees you steal something, they don't need the video evidence, because the police officer is a credible authority, and what the police sees can be submitted in court as evidence. This is my understanding. So what the police officer, the undercover police, saw a few days ago, this friendly banter, was typed up and reported, but not as normal expression or normal behavior, but as a criminal behavior. Right? In some instances, in the past, it was recorded. And they'll use different police officers. And it's been going on for 8 years. So this pattern, because one time I heard the police say, he's at it again. Okay, I can get through this episode. He's at it again. Yeah, I'm being friendly and normal and communicating with people. Gee. So I know that the danger was the Sophie case turned out to be terrible, and it ended up at the tribunal court, right? And it was all manipulated. But that in that particular case, they had organized crime manipulating, controlling the Starbucks employees and telling them what to say to the management, which was lie and deny. And then with the police to say, well, I'm afraid when he comes in, he makes me feel uncomfortable. My words are very threatening. Hi, how are you doing? How are you doing today? Are you going to school? I went to school. I feel like I'm in like the bizarro. This is the bizarro police reality. You know, it's the bizarro. If anybody's familiar with Superman, the bizarro is the opposite of Superman. So everything he says is different. In some cases, in some instances, he would speak backwards. But then in the movies, they have him speaking forwards, right? They would say, instead of I want to go for a walk, you say walk, I want to go for. Walk, I forego I. Anyway, this is the bizarro. We're in the bizarro world here. Okay, so you get the basic gist. What the police observe is evidence. But I spoke to somebody I knew, right? Who's a married, and females are 85% of the staff, and I have no problem with that. And I have no problem if more men work there. And although men are not great with customer service, men, they get upset and they tell people to screw off. We had one guy where I worked, the customer wasn't being cooperative, and he punched him in the face. He punched the customer in the face, yeah, the cashier, who was male. So men, because men have a temper of testosterone, men are different than women. And as much as we'd like to believe they're the same, they're not the same. Men and women are different. If I was a woman, I would be crying throughout this whole episode and how I was abused by the police. Okay, maybe that would get more. I'd probably get more results by that. He cried the whole video. I feel sorry for him. Okay, so that's the first part, and I want to spend the time to make sure you understand the context. Normal behavior being observed by the police who want to arrest me. But you can't arrest somebody for acting normal. So how do you shape the narrative? You reframe. So you reframe the observation, the evidence, as a pattern of behavior. Tosin has this pattern of behavior of engaging young females for his pursuit to be a serial killer and a predator. From, hello, how are you? How you doing? Haven't seen you for a while. So it's complete opposite. It's the complete opposite of reality. But this is what they're doing. And they've been establishing this pattern of behavior, which they submit to counsel. Now we go back to counsel. They submit this evidence is that he has this pattern. He says hello. he answers. He has communication. He says some nice, friendly things to her, which we believe are evil. We believe he's an evil person. He is working a scheme. This is his scheme. He's going to kill the woman. We believe that, and if the police say we believe he's going to kill her, we believe he's going to rape her, that goes into the council, and they're going to take it as credible because it comes from the police. Based on our understanding and observation, he is going to do something evil. He is a threat. Again, it's all a manipulation. So they're not observing. What I'm saying is I'm not committing a crime. If you've seen a crime, let me know in the comments if you've seen a crime. In my view, and maybe I'm wrong, because I'm living in the bizarro world, I'm not committing a crime. Therefore, the police are not observing a crime. It's not like I'm going there with a knife and say, give me all your money. Right? And then I go to a different coffee shop and say, give me all your money. And I go to a different coffee shop and I say, give me all your money. Now that's a pattern of behavior, and it's criminal because I got a knife. Then the police have justification to observe. In this case, they don't have justification. I do not believe they have justification. So they're not observing to investigate a crime because there's no crime. But they're observing to construct the appearance of a crime. And it goes back 8 years. So they got 8 years. This guy, he's working his scheme or something. You know. But it's normal behavior. Now, my research shows that it's called pretextual suspicion. So the police are manufacturing the groundwork for some kind of intervention, some kind of provocation, or an eventual detention or arrest. So, right, they're building this pretextual suspicion. This guy is going to do something. We don't know what it is, but we believe it's bad. He's targeting this young girl a few days ago. But the young girl, I know the girl, I know the family, I know the owners, and she's married, and there's no romantic interest between us. It's just ordering coffee. That's it. So what they're doing is they're transforming innocent behavior into a pattern of supposed risk. It's not an investigative technique based in law. This is unlawful. Okay? Now they'll take extreme cases, maybe in cases in situations like in Sophie, they'll go back to her and say, in that case, she said, I made her afraid and uncomfortable. And this was reported to the police. And I know that because I have the police file that says that, which was completely shocking and baffling to me because I have not done anything to, not only to her, and no one, to no girl, nobody. But that's what was reported. Now, maybe the organized crime told her to say that, and then she said it, and then the police take that as serious. So we do know that the police have this case where a girl said, I made her afraid and uncomfortable, which is completely absurd and is patently untrue. But the girl said it, and it's documented, and I've seen it. So they can deny all they want. That's a fact. So they can build a pattern saying, here he is again, and he's going to make this girl uncomfortable. Here he is again, and make this girl, who's 85% of the makeup of staff, here he is again making this girl uncomfortable. Okay? So In order to do that, you're taking notes, you're exaggerating the situation. Young female, older male, working the same pattern, right? You have subjective characterization, right? You are labeling me as a threat, as evil, having bad intention, and you're building a misleading behavioral profile. So they're building a profile based on, I would go back to Sophie as a clear case, that Sophie, she not only destroyed my reputation and destroyed my life, but she got me in trouble with the police for no reason at all. I should thank you very much. Thank you very much, Sophie, for now getting me in trouble with the police and labeling me as a stalker and a threat. Thank you very much. I should have never spoken to this girl. That girl. Trouble. Sophie, you are a terrible, terrible, terrible person. And you got a lot of debt. We're not finished. We're not finished between you and me. I tell you that much. Okay. So we have this pretextual suspicion. Now we go to the charter. Okay? Charter. The Charter of, what's it called? The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms, enacted by the Canada Act 1982. Proclaimed in force in 1982, amended by the Constitution Amendment Proclamation 83. Amended again in 1993. Here he goes. Supremacy of the law. Rights and freedoms. The Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms guarantees the rights and freedoms set out in it, subject only to such reasonable limits prescribed by law as can be demonstrably justified in a free and democratic society. For us today, I'm talking about the fundamental freedom under Section 2, Subrule B. Everyone has the following fundamental freedom: freedom of thought, belief, opinion, and expression, including freedom of the press and other media of communication. Freedom of expression. So, freedom of expression, let's go through this in plain language. The state cannot tell me what to say or what I cannot say. State cannot intimidate me into silence. State cannot use regular, normal, and lawful behavior for detention, for wellness checks, for surveillance, to gather evidence for an eventual arrest. Again, regular, normal, lawful behavior. Any such conduct is an interference of expression of freedom. Now, the threshold for the charter protection is low. Any non-violent communication is protected. So, in the case of the coffee shop communication, it is normal, lawful expression, protected under Section 2B of the Charter. The state cannot interfere with my expression of freedom. So, observing me, taking notes, constructing a pattern of behavior is a violation of the Charter right now. So that is part one. So it's freedom of expression. Second, their conduct, the police conduct, violates Section 7 of the Charter. Let me read Section 7. Section 7, life, liberty, and security of person. Everyone has a right to life, liberty, and security of the person, and the right not to be deprived thereof, and except in accordance with the principles of fundamental justice. Now, those cover a lot of things. In this particular case, the police are undermining my psychological security. How this observation, note-taking, the threat of a potential arrest, the criminalization of lawful behavior. So, under 7, state cannot interfere with psychological security or liberty. Again, we said liberty, life, liberty, and security. So they cannot interfere with psychological security or psychological liberty. That's also protected under the Charter. Abusive, manipulative conduct designed to distort an individual's choices is a violation under Section 7. Using coercive, manipulative, or oppressive conduct, prolonged monitoring, and intimidation tactics, following me from one coffee shop to another coffee shop, following me to my workplace, that's intimidation. That's against the law. In this particular case, it affects my psychological security. So all of this monitoring to suppress lawful behavior, again, lawful behavior, as we've discussed, is an infringement of psychological integrity and personal autonomy. So it's a violation of Section 7 of the Charter. So far, just this pattern that we're dealing with. So Section 2B, freedom of expression. Section 7, security. Now, it doesn't stop there. Section 8. Section 8, it is also violates Section 8. What Section 8 says? Everyone search or seizure. Everyone has the right to be secure against unreasonable search or seizure. Unreasonable. So, what they're observing is rooted in speculation and fabrication. They are projecting their own depraved thoughts onto me. They're building a pattern, right? They're constructing a pattern from innocent behavior to allow this surveillance, which is not rooted in evidence because there's no crime. There's no evidence of a crime. But if you say this is a pattern of behavior, even though the behavior is innocent, then that allows them, or they've somehow convinced somebody to allow them to continue this surveillance, which is unlawful. Section 8, unreasonable search and seizure, also protects against unreasonable surveillance, prolonged, targeted, planned surveillance without lawful basis, right? Equals a search. So unreasonable search and seizure, well, all of this planning for surveillance, targeting, it's going on for 8 years. Even if you look in the recent period, is 3 years of a very intense surveillance. But it goes back 8. Even if you want to go back 3 years, even if you want to go back 1 year, that's a long-term surveillance for somebody who's not committing a crime. It's a violation of Section 8. It's unreasonable surveillance. And then we look at Section 9. Section 9, detention or imprisonment. Everyone has the right not to be arbitrarily detained or imprisoned. So the state is attempting to exert a kind of psychological detention by these observations, these intimidation tactics. Many times the police would show up and they would kind of alert themselves, I'm a police. Sometimes they would point to their weapon, right? Sometimes they'd be more aggressive, but they wouldn't say anything. They'd walk around and they'd look at you, right? Other times they would just observe. Other times they would use decoys, which is a whole different topic. they would use other players to instigate a reaction, right? To call it kind of like entrapment, which is another problem, which we're not going to get into. So it's a psychological detention. Constant monitoring would lead any reasonable person to believe, right? Understand, would lead any reasonable person to believe they were being detained in substance, if not in form. This constant surveillance by the police, almost daily, at my workplace, at the places I frequent, where I'm not committing a crime, it leads to believe that there's a psychological detention, right? I'm being detained, and I'm being prevented from behaving normally. I'm being oppressed, and my freedom of expression is being oppressed. I'm not allowed. And I've had difficulty with this because they don't like what I'm saying, and I'm not saying anything bad, so I don't know what to say. And it's caused a lot of psychological turmoil and stress and sleepless nights to understand, what do they want? What do you want me to say? You can't tell me what to say. The state cannot tell me what to say. My friend can tell me what to say, and I can say, screw you. The state cannot impose their will on me, because it would violate the charter. So they're surveying me, and they're collecting information, and they're building a case. They're reporting, they're sending all these notes to the council, and council's saying, okay, that's good evidence, and that's not great. That doesn't make him look great, but we can't use that in court. Can you get some more? So they go out and they get some more. And they've been doing this for 8 years. Because the Sophie one is really good, but that's the only one. And she was manipulated. She was conspiring with organized crime, which is a crime, right? The organized crime was coaching this girl and others what to say to the police and to the managers so that they wouldn't get into trouble. That's a crime. You cannot coach. The organized crime cannot coach or instruct another person to do something, and it may not even be a crime. They don't have to commit a crime. If they're coached by organized crime, that's a crime. If they're listening to the organized crime, that's a crime. All of that was ignored. And I told the police all of that, and I told the tribunal, which was reported. They ignored it. They ignored it, and they dismissed it. Those are crimes in the criminal code. 46711. Let's see if we have it here. I might have it. 4671. 1. Participation in activities of criminal organization. Every person who, for the purpose of enhancing the ability of a criminal organization to facilitate or commit an indictable offense under this or any other act of Parliament, knowingly, by act or omission, remember that, participates in or contributes to any activity of the criminal organization is guilty of an indictable offense, liable to imprisonment for a term of not more than 5 years, an offense punishable on summary conviction. In 2, subrule 2, in a prosecution for an offense under subsection 1, it is not necessary for the prosecutor to prove that A, the criminal organization actually facilitated or committed an indictable offense. You don't have to commit an offense. B, they don't have to prove the participation or contribution of the accused actually enhanced the ability of the criminal organization to facilitate an indictable offense. So they don't even have to prove that they actually enhanced the ability of the criminal organization. The accused, they don't have to prove, it is not necessary to prove that the accused knew the specific nature of the indictable offense that may have been facilitated or committed. So you don't even, the Starbucks employees didn't have to know what it was they were doing. And they don't have to know they don't have to prove the accused knew the identity of any of the persons who constitute the criminal organization, right? So the threshold is pretty broad, right? to commit a crime. If you're coached by this criminal organization, it's the prosecution doesn't have to prove any of those details. And they can use other things like whether the accused uses a name, word, or symbol frequently associates with those persons, receives any benefit from the organization, repeatedly engages at the instructions of persons who constitute the criminal organization, which was the case. So they don't have to commit a crime in order to enhance the activities of a criminal organization. In other laws, like in the related laws, you can't. Here you go. If you work for the benefit or the direction of a criminal organization, that's also a crime. Right? If someone directs you, directly or indirectly instructs you to commit an offense, and the requirement is under the law, you don't even have to commit the offense. But if they instructed you to commit an offense, even if you don't commit an offense, even if you don't know what the offense is, even if you don't know who those people are, it's a crime. That was all glossed over by back then, 8 years ago, 9 years ago. So understand my dilemma. My dilemma. Organized crime has been attacking me. They have attempted to kill me, multiple occasions, 11 occasions. They've broken into my house 10 times. They've sabotaged my car numerous times. I'm going to the coffee shop. Contrast it with I'm going to the coffee shop having a regular, normal conversation. I got police every day following me, surveying me, and ready to arrest me. These people are trying to kill me. They're breaking into my house. They're sabotaging my car. They're instructing people I know to destroy my life. No police presence. Zero. You would think that someone's trying to kill you that would obtain police presence. Understand the hypocrisy and the kind of the bizarro reality I'm living in, and that's why I'm upset, or why I'm taking this, why I'm talking about this. My way to deal with it is to talk about it. But you tell me, which one is more important? Which one is more important? Talking to people at a coffee shop with no crime, or committing hundreds of crimes to destroy someone and to kill them and to sabotage their car and to instruct Starbucks employees to sabotage the man's life? You tell me which is more criminal, which requires more police attention, more police investigation. And they got the video. We haven't even talked about the video. Why don't you get the police investigating the video, the voyeur video? No. We are going after Toshin because he's talking to these girls at the coffee shop and he's making them uncomfortable and they're afraid. That's what they're going to manufacture. Why? So the question is, at the back of your mind, why? What is driving the police to fabricate a fraudulent case against me? Why? You can think about that while I turn the page. Okay. Oh yeah, 5. So, I've shown, in brief, the Charter, Section 2B, violated. Section 7, violated. Section 8, violated. Section 9, violated. Four violations. Under the Charter, Section 24, 2, evidence obtained through charter breaches. If evidence is gathered in violation of your rights, evidence should be excluded. Let me read it exactly in case someone's taking notes. Maybe counsel. If counsel, you're listening. Section 24, sub-rule 2. Where, in proceedings under subsection 1, a court concludes that evidence was obtained in a matter that infringed or denied the rights and freedoms guaranteed by this charter, which is the case here 4 times. But not just 4 times. We're talking over a period of 8 years, multiple, probably hundreds of violations. The evidence shall be excluded if considered, everything considered, it would bring the admission of the evidence to the proceedings, would bring the administration of justice in disrepute. We've talked about that. In other words, all this evidence, what I'm arguing is all this evidence that has been collected over 8 years or 3 years, however many years or months, is inadmissible in any court. Primarily, fundamentally, because it establishes no crime. No crime has been established. The behavior is normal. Nothing unlawful was said. No threats, no criminal behavior, no disturbance. I'm not mentally disturbed. I'm not attacking anybody, only normal expressive conduct. It's inadmissible. All this evidence is it's not only inadmissible, the police have violated the charter. What that means is, and we're going to get to one more section after this for their justification. But first, what it means is 24 under section 24, sub-rule 1 of the charter. Anyone whose rights and freedoms that are guaranteed have been infringed can obtain such a remedy as the court considers appropriate and just in the circumstances. 8 years of violations, hundreds of violations, 4 sections of the charter violated. Even if it's 3 months, but or 3 years or 8 years is irrelevant. It says here, anyone who may apply to a court to obtain remedy. I'm entitled to a remedy. I would ask, if I go to court, I would ask for financial compensation for destroying my life. And the number would have lots of zeros after it. Okay. So, one more section, and then we should be done. So why, we haven't got into why are the police doing this? Why? I don't know. It's such a minor thing. First of all, it's a very minor. There's no crime. Second of all, it's impeding my personal life. It's impeding my personal life. It's hurting me psychologically. It's hurting my reputation. It's hurting my career. It's hurting my business. It's hurting my income. It's hurting my workers. Right? There's a lot of harm. Right? I've lost income. I've lost friendships. I've lost opportunities. I have psychological issues now. I have to deal with instances of depression. I have to instances of fear of being apprehended. Right? That they're arbitrarily, the police will come and arrest me for no reason at all. Why? Why? Because they have to state why you're under arrest. Why am I under arrest? Because you talk too much! You were too friendly with that woman, Mr. Joshin. We saw you. You used really nice words, Mr. Joshin. The words, when you said hello, you scared her. You scared her, Mr. Joshin. You said hello! Hello! I'm living in a bizarre world. That's what it is. It doesn't stop. Yeah, so we're gonna make more episodes. Don't worry, because it's now they won't stop. I'm not gonna stop. So we've I think we've established the case. We've established the argument that they violated the charter. Their acts are unlawful. They have to stop. Okay. Now the government, under Section 1, which we read up front, government can argue that violation is saved under Section 1. So what's Section 1 says? Subject to such reasonable limits prescribed by law. That's the case. Is it reasonable? If the police can go to the court and the judge say, what we're doing is reasonable in the circumstances, then what it says, it can be saved by law by Section 1. Their action can be justified under Section 1 because they say it's reasonable. The police have a very strong effect on a court, right? They're an authority in the law enforcement. If they say something, the court listens. If I say something, the court doesn't listen because I have no authority. I have very little credibility. Even if I'm right, the court will listen to the police and will listen to the counsel who will be representing the intention of the corrupt police officers who are acting unlawfully. So, but here's the thing. In order to be justified, it must pass a test. It's called the Oakes test. It's not Hall and Oakes. The Oakes test says there's 4 parts. First part the action has to have a very important reason, right? Has a very important reason. For example, if you were preventing violence, right? If I was a guy with a knife and I was talking and stabbing people, then you're preventing. So there's justification. You're preventing. If you're maintaining public safety, if I was a threat, then their action to violate my freedoms is justified. But I've got four violations. They'd have to justify each violation, right? In court, they'd have to violate it. They'd have to justify each one. So that's 4, and they have to test it to 4 parts. So there's 4 times 4. There's 16. It'd be a very long argument. Minor convenience-based reason is not enough. Right now, it's just a convenience, There's no threat. So is there a very important reason? I don't think so. So it fails. I think it already fails, part 1 of the Oakes test. Part 2 is rational connection. To limit limit on expression, if the limit on expression helps us to achieve the objective, but because they're limiting my form of expression, communicating, acting normally. If the conduct is based on, if the act, right, is based on misinterpretation, fabrication, convenience, suspicion without grounds, right? There's no ground. Where are the grounds? You must have reasonable grounds. So there's no rational connection, and they're all misinterpreting. It's all subjective. It's all a fabrication. There's no reasonable ground. There's nothing concrete that they can say he is doing something threatening, criminal. So it fails part 2 of the test. Now, in order to proceed, in order to save the violation, you have to pass all 4 parts. All 4. So they failed, not an important reason. There's no rational connection. 3, minimal impairment. So was there a less intrusive way to deal with the situation? And the less intrusive way would be don't do anything. So there was another way. Did they intervene as little as possible? They're there all the time. Every time I go to the coffee shop, they are there. They come to my workplace 5-6 days a week. I've seen them 7 days a week, sometimes multiple times a day for 8 years. If the state overreacted but had other options, then it's not saved. So minimal impairment, I think it fails. They didn't do as little as possible. They did as much as possible. every day at every location I go to. That is a fundamental violation of my rights and freedoms. Every day, every time I go somewhere, they are there. And the other issue is the police communicate to the owners of the coffee shop. They communicated to Starbucks and management. And they advised the managers what to do. In the case with the coffee shop, they advised the coffee shop not to, in some cases, not to interact with me. And there was a period where none of the staff would say anything to me because the police frightened them and controlled them and told them how to express themselves, which they violated. The police violated the rights of the staff, which is a charter violation. Right? The police told the staff, Tosin is a bad guy, is a threat. Do not engage. Do not talk to him because he might kill you. Okay? There's no evidence of any of this thing. This all comes back, it all goes back to Andy and Brian and Sophie. That's where it goes back. It goes back. It's still going. The Energizer Bunny of stupidity. That was 3. It fails. 4, proportional balancing. Do benefits to society outweigh the harm to my rights? Is there any benefit to society by following me around everywhere I go? What's the benefit? Well, what's the threat? There's no threat. So what's the benefit? There's no benefit. There's no benefit to following me around. So it fails. If the state causes suppression of expression, which they're doing, fear and intimidation, which they're doing, reputational harm, which they're doing, psychological harm, which they're doing, wrongful surveillance, which they're doing, then it's not proportionally balanced. The benefits to society do not outweigh the harm to my life. They've done extreme harm to my life for many years, and this fails. So 1, 2, 3, 4. All 4 parts of the Oakes test have failed miserably, and we've got four violations. That's 4 violations of the charter just on this particular one, right? We haven't talked about the other stuff, the entrapment stuff, which is far more dangerous. So, in closing, the act, my behavior is normal, ordinary expression. There's no criminality. There's no violence. There's no need for detention or arrest. It is intrusive. It is harmful to me. It has damaged my life. There's no rational connection. There's no substantial objective. There's nothing. There's 0. Overreaction erodes minimal impairment and proportional effects. The state cannot justify any of these violations, especially a violation, even just the fundamental violation of freedom of expression. That's 8 years of violation. 8 years of violation of my freedom of expression. 8 years of violation of the charter. So I say to counsel, if counsel's listening, this whole matter will fail. And these police should be investigated, and they should be held accountable, and they should be disciplined. And I should be given a remedy for all the loss of the last 8 years of my life. And I would call it a financial compensation with lots of zeros after it. A number with lots of zeros. Yeah. So, that's my argument for today. Thanks for watching. Next episode, we're going to talk about Starbucks. I'm going to talk about specific actions that the employees did that required a customer service complaint, as well as some new and interesting information of what happened even outside of Starbucks And then we'll also talk about the banning, the March 1st, 2018 banning, and then the other ban on September 25th, 2023, after the dismissal of the tribunal complaint. And I will also reference the decision, which is public. So everything I'm telling you is public from what I know. There's nothing confidential being revealed. I'm not a lawyer, but I've been dealing with the law for the number of years in order to protect myself. So I'm gathering a basic understanding. I'm a pseudo lawyer, which is a fake lawyer. I don't believe what the police are doing is lawful. I don't understand what they want. Nothing's been stated, so I don't know what it is they want. At some point, they might say something or they might not. But they have all this evidence. All this evidence is in documents, and if someday I can obtain it, I'll present it. If it's public, I'll present it. But it's there. And they have the voyeur video. They won't do anything with that. Now they've amassed all of this behavioral evidence, which is all a fabrication, which I believe is a fraud. Now, this is why I don't trust the police, right? This is why I don't trust the police. This is corruption. It's nothing short of corruption. There's no basis. There's no reasonable basis for any of this, and there's no crime present. At least let me commit a crime. Let me commit a crime first, and then you can go to town. I'm sure they're ready to go. I think they're ready. As soon as I do if I do a criminal, they're gonna jump on me like a monkey on a branch of bananas. I'm telling you, as soon as something, they're gonna jump because they're eager. They want to destroy my life, and I don't know why. I just want to say this. I don't know why. I've not done anything to the police. I don't know the police. They keep following me around. I don't know what you want. Tell me what you want. I had enough problems with organized crime, which is they're still doing stuff. I'm still dealing with that. Now I got the police. Who else? Who else can we get to join in? I'm entitled. This is a democracy. I'm entitled to live my life peaceful, free. I'm allowed free association. I should be able to go where I want, move where I want, go to my workplace without losing my threat of losing my job, go to the coffee shop without people manipulating the coffee shop staff and owners to say I'm a bad guy, I'm a threat, when I'm not. Right? If I was, yeah, but I'm not. You haven't established it. There's no evidence. So there's no evidence of nothing. It's unlawful. It's corrupt. If it's corrupt, if you're manufacturing a narrative and you're not going after the criminals, but you're coming after me, maybe it's because they got better lawyers than I do, right? They got the mafia. They got the best lawyers. Trust me. They're calling the best lawyers. They said this is what you do. This is what you do. I don't have that, so they're coming after me. Maybe that's it. But they're making stuff up. I don't like that. Now, I'm sure there's some honest cops in the mix, but they can't really say anything. If they say anything, their brothers are going to come after them, plant bags of cocaine in their car, and they're going to get, fired. So I don't expect the good cops to say anything. By the same token, give them some, what do you call that? Valium. Why don't you give the sergeant some Valium and say, Sarge, have this, sit down, take this little pill and just relax. Take it easy. It's the Bizarro. Welcome to the Bizarro reality, folks. See you next episode.
Just close your eyes and you'll see something, a story never seen. It started at Starbucks with a barista queen. She joined a criminal group one day, a group that couldn't be seen. But Paris, he fought them all, like the animals in the sea. The animals in the sea.